Do you need to poop now?
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Let's Rewatch, the show where we like to watch movies we loved in our youth and see if they're actually still any good. I'm Nick.
I'm Bret.
I'm Sam.
That's Maddie. And I'm Ash.
Wow. Hi, Kitty. We have a new kitty on our podcast this
Our
week.
guest today.
So we are going to watch Blade Runner. And I want to say, some people might say Blade Runner from 1982, but we're going to watch Blade Runner from 2007.
Which is uncommonly known as Knife Walker.
Wow.
No.
I would pay to see Rutger Hauer in Knife Walker.
Knife Walker?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
He just walks with a knife. I'll cut you, but I'm not running.
I'll get there.
Yeah. Don't run with the knife.
Yeah, didn't Harrison Ford's parents tell him not to run with blades? So the reason I say 2007 is because Ash and I on the drive up here were getting into the whole conversation of the different versions of this movie. And Bret and Sam, I don't know if you're up to date on all the different versions of this movie.
I know there's some controversy.
Yeah.
Because what was released was manipulated by the distributor. I believe. Dictated? I don't understand. It wasn't what the director wanted.
Correct.
Yeah, I had to do a little research on the drive up.
So apparently the director, Ridley Scott, and Harrison Ford added some scenes in to explain some things. They felt like it needed some scenes. But then the investors didn't like it and test audience testing too.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you found? So the investors insisted on adding a voiceover that's basically exposition. It's just like exposition voiceover of Harrison Ford. And apparently
This is instead of the scene, or this is over the scene?
I think
I'm
you're
not sure.
a little out of order. I think it was test audiences said, we're not completely following this.
Okay.
And Ridley and Harrison Ford thought, okay, this could use with some more, a few scenes to explain some stuff. But the financiers said, we're going to do a voiceover and you don't get a choice.
Right.
So that, I think the voiceover and the ending of the film are the major points of contention.
Because they wanted a different ending.
They wanted a happy ending.
So apparently there's a happy ending in the theatrical release.
I know nothing about this.
Yeah, I've never actually watched this entire movie.
Oh, wow.
Oh, we'll get to that conversation.
Well, then.
So yeah, there was the original theatrical version. There were lots of different versions over time, but the core versions are the original theatrical from 1982, then a director's cut, which is kind of badly named because the studio convinced Ridley Scott to give his permission, but he was not involved in the director's cut. So it wasn't quite what he wanted. So what we're going to watch is called The Final Cut, which was from 2007 when Ridley Scott finally was able to get his hands in there and make the edits that he wanted to make.
But they changed Final Cut to 64-bit and it didn't have all the features. And everyone switched to Adobe.
Yeah, they switched over
Now there's
to
a Premiere Cut.
Yeah.
Blade Runner Premiere Cut.
An Avid Cut.
Yeah.
Editor joke. Can you tell we're video editors?
So that's what we're watching, the Final Cut from 2007. And I think, Ash, you're the one with very strong opinions about this.
I guess so. Maybe I was not aware. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I like this movie a lot. I mean, it's not like in my opinion, the best movie in the world, but it's up there with good movies in my opinion. But I had only ever seen the version without the horrible VO, and I went to try to show it to Bryce, and unbeknownst to me, we started watching the version with the awful VO, which I just think ruins it horribly. So I like, just to be clear, angry internet people who will write me and tell me I'm wrong, but I like the version without the VO, personally.
And it's been my experience that people who do care about this movie really care about the thing you're talking about, whether they agree with you or not. Everybody has a really strong opinion.
Yeah, because it just kind of, I mean, it is, I don't think it spoils anything to let you know that it's kind of in the style of a noir detective film. And so, like, I get that that's also kind of part of that style to have, like, a voiceover, but it just feels unnecessary and feels like, we talked about this in the car, it feels like Basil exposition, you know? Yeah. But I'm not sure that I've ever seen the happy ending. I've only ever seen one ending. So
the version that you watched with the voiceover should have had the happy ending, if I'm understanding what I read.
Yeah, the version I saw had the same ending that I've always seen. So I'm not sure. But as we looked up on Wikipedia, apparently there's 8 different versions of this film. So who fucking knows what I saw?
That's a lot of different versions.
There's this thing called the work print, which was an illegitimate, almost fan-made version of what they thought Ridley wanted, and that popped up in a few theaters. And yeah, there's just weird, messy evolution of this movie.
That's like a Lucasian number of edits. Like
Lucasian?
I just made that up. It's like Star Wars.
Oh, George Lucas. Okay. Yeah.
I think the thing that I really like about this film, though, the most is I like that, like all of Ridley Scott's movies, like Alien, it feels very real. So it's the set design and the costuming that I really love in this movie, because it's a future world that's not bright and shiny and clean, because let's be real, that's not realistic. Like, the future world is going to have these dumpy, you know, like, not everyone has the money for the fancy new shiny technology. So some people are going to be using outdated technology. Some people are going to be hacking stuff together. And
now, counterpoint, every now and then in the future, the sun will come up. So,
are you saying there's no sun in this movie?
So I'm just going to jump out here and say this. I don't like this movie.
Oh,
yeah. So this will be an interesting podcast. Yeah, I and so on.
I know a scene where there's sun.
Okay,
so
good.
Just to say,
but it doesn't feel like that in my memory. Like, I get bleak and dark and gritty and real. But man, like, give me a minute to breathe.
So I've never seen this movie, and that's totally my expectation. Is like it all happens at night, or like very little sunlight. It's all dark and gritty, and
Harrison Ford's Dark City.
But again, film noir. I mean, yeah, that's sort of what you should be expecting with film noir.
I think film noir happens mostly at night, but it's black and white typically, so even the day scenes feel darker.
Yeah. So there's definitely sun.
This is in color, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bret, Sam, have you done seen the movie? Sam,
no, I know nothing about it. I know it's Harrison Ford. I know the poster is kind of famous because it was the guy that also did the Star Wars posters, I believe.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's new
I don't remember.
to me.
It was painted and cool, and
yeah, that sounds like a thing that I also might have heard. But that's, of course, that's the advertising art side of it that we would know.
Yeah, it's kind of in that time period genre of posters. Yeah, now that you mentioned that.
The things that I know about this movie are very limited. I remember when I was young that at a family gathering, someone decided to put this movie on, and I walked away immediately.
It does kind of suck the air out of the room.
Yeah, damn, your family watched some
heavy
weird
shit.
Yeah.
I remember
keep the kids entertained. Put a snuff film on.
a lot of angst and a lot of smoke on screen. I feel like I'm gonna watch this and be like, man, there's a lot of smoke everywhere. But that also might be part of the noir feel.
I think there's to Nick's credit, I think there's haze in the sky. Imagine LA in 50 years and it's just gotten so bad that it blocks out a lot of sunlight.
This is Los Angeles in the distant year of 2019.
So there is smog.
Yeah.
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 2019 is when this film. Oh my god!
I believe so.
That is 2 years from now.
There's a word that I know that I think is associated strongly with this film, I think, which is replicants. Is that this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
So, I mean, depending on how this whole North Korea thing shakes out, it very easily could be LA in 2019.
Wow.
Because of nuclear war?
We're the target! We're the biggest city on the coast.
Well, the city's not destroyed. It's not a post-apocalyptic movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a post-pollution movie.
Okay.
Now, I feel like all the things that this movie is trying to do and people love about this movie that I feel did resonate and worked for me are in The Fifth Element.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what I want
feel
this
ya.
movie to be. And man, I love Fifth Element.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to watch Fifth Element again after seeing this one. I mean,
Right, let's watch it right after.
Again, I'm not saying that it's the best film in the world, but
what's funny, the best film in the world is
by
Alien, also directed by Ridley Scott.
which is weird that you wouldn't like this film
I think that actually is a testament to how good a director he is.
because he has range.
Yeah, I don't want a director who makes the same movie over and over again.
Yeah.
And he makes very different, very good movies. I believe this is a great movie that I dislike. Mm-hmm. I say that before watching it today, so we'll see how that shakes out. So, of course, we've got Mr. Harrison Ford, who we've recently seen in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
This was quite a few years before this, but it was pretty close to Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was 1982. Does anybody remember when Raiders is? Like 83 or 4 or something?
I don't remember.
I could look that up. We've also seen Rutger Hauer recently when we watched Lady Hawk
Oh, yeah.
from 1985. So I believe Blade Runner is Rutger Hauer's first American movie.
So this was before Lady Hawk. Oh, yeah.
3 years before, which makes Rutger Hauer a really interesting choice for this character because he feels like a very foreign dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to say too much more.
Yeah, we'll probably talk more about that. It's funny we were talking about Ace Ventura because Sean Young, I most remember from Ace Ventura. Einhorn is Finkel, Finkel is Einhorn.
I don't remember that.
I don't, yeah, sorry.
Remember the police chief in Ace Ventura who turned out to be a man? That was Sean Young, who's also in this movie.
I legit don't remember anything about Ace Ventura, apparently.
I don't know if I've ever seen Ace Ventura.
For what it's worth, we've talked about doing Ace Ventura for this podcast, and it is not to be had on streaming services.
What?
So that's why we haven't done it.
I know I've seen one of them, because there's more than one, right?
There's two.
I've seen one.
And then I think there's like a straight-to-video Son of Ace Ventura.
What's the one at the end? There's like some lady who's been deflowered by him or something.
That was the second one. I think.
Okay, I've only seen the second one then.
Okay. Is that the Pet Detective one?
I think so.
Well, Pet Detective is the first one, the main.
Oh, never mind.
Huh. And then the second one, he like goes international with it.
Okay.
I really like the meme though, where he has the arrows in his knee.
That was the second one. Yeah.
I just love that. And then people put the thing from Skyrim, like, I was an adventurer like you until I took an arrow to the knee.
Wow.
All my Skyrim fans out there.
Where my Skyrim's at? So we've also got Daryl Hannah and Edward James Olmos.
Really?
Really?
Edward James Olmos?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I don't remember them in this movie.
Yeah. It'll all come back to you. And so I guess the reason we thought it would be fun to watch this is because there's a new movie coming out on October 6th, Blade Runner 2049. Anybody excited about that?
I am.
Yeah.
I think it looks pretty cool from the trailers. They make it look pretty.
It's a direct sequel.
I believe so.
Yes, Harrison Ford is in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Ryan Reynolds is
Ryan Gosling.
Or Ryan Gosling. Ryan Reynolds.
Close
It'd be
enough.
a different movie.
Well, we've got a Ryan thing boiling with the Chris Pine, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth scenario.
But Ryan Gosling, who I think if you were to pick anybody else to like pick up with that sequel, you know, he's going to do an amazing job.
I'm on record as loving Ryan Gosling, and if I had to cast most Harrison Ford roles today, I think Ryan Gosling is a good choice.
Yeah. Hey, girl.
Yep. But Denis Villeneuve is directing this new version, and he directed Arrival, which I love. Arrival.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I still haven't seen it.
It's really good.
And I guess Sicario was really good, but I never saw it.
Oh, I never saw that either, but I heard it was good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see the next movie from Denny, but I don't know. Like, and contrary to what I typically do, I've watched the trailer for the new Blade Runner.
Oh, you did watch it?
Yeah. And it seems like it could be very good if it's not so depressing, you know?
I mean, they seem to be sticking with the original style as far as like visuals. It does still look very dark.
Yeah.
But it looks cool. I'd be down to see it.
It also looks like an opportunity for, I think John Batista is his name, the guy who is Drax the Destroyer.
The wrestler.
Yeah.
He's in it?
He's in it, and it seems like he's trying to do like a real serious acting career, not just being an action star, and it looks like this could be a really good role for him.
Oh, cool.
For that.
That's cool. I like him.
He seems promising, yeah.
I'm sorry. I
But-
thought you were talking about Drogo from Game of Thrones. Who also, you know, he fits that bill.
He was their first choice for Drax the
was he?
Destroyer.
Oh.
Yeah, but he wanted to hold out for like
Aquaman
now he's
or
doing
something?
Aquaman. I think he just wanted to do more of a lead, and I guess that worked out for him with Aquaman.
Does it?
Well,
Like the latest
I'm not holding my
superhero.
breath.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, is that whole movie going to be underwater? Because if not,
Literally
yeah,
and figuratively.
yeah. Are you guys excited, Brett and Sam? The new?
For the new one?
I mean, maybe that's not something you'll have an opinion on until after this movie.
I saw the trailer for it, and I mean, it looks all right. It looks kind of like what my imagination of this first one is, which is it feels kind of like it might be required sci-fi viewing. And yet I've gotten along
good phrase.
really well without seeing this. So I wonder, like, what are the things that I'm going to see in this movie where I'm just like, that's where that came from?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Isn't the enhance thing from this movie?
I don't remember that, but since you mention it, the article that I read about the different versions, they had that thrown in as a joke.
I think it's from this movie.
Okay.
This is the movie that started the enhance
Okay.
thing that you see made fun of.
Okay.
I was just watching a new sci-fi movie on Netflix called What Happened to Monday, and it's just like the moment came up and they're like, wait, look at this footage, and I'm like, enhance, and then they're like, enhance, and I'm like, fucking every time now.
I wish I could remember where it was. It was some show I saw, and the guy was like, can you increase the resolution on that picture? And the guy at the computer said, it doesn't work like that.
Yay!
And I threw up my arms and cheered. And actually, I feel like I should mention there's a great article on Nerdist, Blade Runner 35th Anniversary, Which Cut Should You Watch? By Rose Knight. And that's where I got all this information. So it's definitely worth checking out if you're struggling with the different versions. And she had a joke about enhance in that article.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive that came from this.
But I like that phrase. This is required viewing. It's expected that you have seen this movie.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that I haven't. So I think this closes a gap on, I can't think of any other major franchises that I haven't at least seen part of. So
Okay.
I will say that I do remember it being difficult to follow. I feel like it's a little difficult.
I did want to say that because part of what I didn't like about this movie is it's very slow and kind of boring. And I wonder if voiceover might pep it up a little bit.
No,
you know?
no.
So I can see where that sentiment came from. Whether that's the best solution or not, I feel like where that would have come from. Sam, did you say, are you excited about the new movie or excited about this movie? Or
I'm excited to watch this movie. I feel like I don't really know what to expect. Like everything I've learned to expect, I learned right now from you guys. Good. So I don't really have an opinion on the new one.
I learned from you.
In this instance, yes. So yeah, I don't know. I'll see. I'll tell you after I watch this one.
Hey, that sounds like a good structure for a podcast.
Imagine that.
So the final cut is available on Google Play. Blade Runner in general is on iTunes, but I don't remember which version it is, but I couldn't find it on Netflix. So if you want to watch the movie along with us, we're going to pause recording and we're going to check out Blade Runner, the final cut, not the director's cut, the final cut, which came after the director's cut. Yeah. The final cut from 2007. And when we're done, we'll jump back on and see how we feel. We just watched Blade Runner, I guess.
Blade Runner. Harrison, stop running with those blades. Walk. I told you 1,000 times to walk. Harrison.
And point the pointy end away from you. You don't want to trip and fall and stab yourself.
What are you, some kind of Blade Runner? This is Ridley Scott as a child, actually. Why, yes. I have an idea.
So, yeah, I think that was pretty much what I remembered.
I think we have to address one of the elephants in the room. Number one.
This is a room full of elephants.
Yeah. Number one, I have to apologize to you, Bret, because there was a lot of smoke in there.
There was a lot of fucking smoke.
So much smoke. You were very right. But I think the other elephant in the room is one that Sam pointed out during the movie, and I think that's part of the reason you don't like this film, Nick.
Nick thinks that robots don't have feelings.
And so therefore, of course, this movie's boring to you.
What do you mean thinks? Obviously, robots don't have feelings.
It is
maybe right
opinion now. Because these are not real robots. So they clearly have feelings in this film and this portrayal of robots. And in the realm of possible things, it is certainly possible that robots could have feelings.
So
yeah, I don't agree.
So is this movie kind of a lot like Raiders of the Lost Ark in that everything that happened in the movie would have happened anyway if Harrison Ford wasn't involved?
Well, no, he killed a few of these robots.
Yeah, but
they were going to die. Like, they set a really short timeline for how long these guys could be getting away from him.
And also, it appears that the robot's goal was either figure out how to live longer or kill Tyrell. And they succeeded in killing Tyrell. So,
yeah.
I don't know
understand.
that Harrison really achieved anything in the movie.
Robot sex.
Robot sex. Definitely robot sex.
And that's an accomplishment.
Forced robot sex.
Yeah, that was dark.
A little creepy.
That was a little creepy. It was a lot creepy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if this is a creature with thoughts, feelings, emotions, and personal identity,
Stockholm.
then he raped her.
Yes.
Wait, but Nick, can you rape a robot, Nick?
But if it's a robot without thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it's just
then you're okay with this?
A creepy activity.
Yeah, no, he's a dick. He tried to turn that no into a yes and rape the crap out of her. And then that stupid saxophone had to come in and be like, audience, it's okay. It's supposed to be sexy.
I mean,
no.
If she is a real person with thoughts and everything, that's rape.
Yeah.
The other side of that is just like you had sex with your refrigerator. I mean, you can if you want, but like, why? And like,
he was covering all the bases though, because he basically like
illegal
held her up against the wall, and it was just like consent, and she's like, "Okay, I consent,"
which is still rape.
Yep.
Unless it's an appliance.
She's not an appliance. She's scared to die. Do you think my refrigerator's sitting there and like, oh God, when's my day gonna come?
I think it's an appliance running a program simulating what it would look like if it was afraid to die.
And
They actually went out of their. I'm going to take Nick's side on this one.
God damn it.
They went out of their way to make that point in the movie earlier on when they were doing their robot test, and he's like, "You had to ask her like 100 questions. She's a pretty good robot, isn't she?"
Yeah, it's running a good simulation.
But he said the reason why they have to do that test in the first place is because they started to develop their own emotional reactions to things that weren't programmed.
No, I think he said that she was a specific test that he was doing where he was trying to get them to have their own emotional responses.
Yeah, but the reason why the other robots were given away by it is because their programming went wonky and they started having emotional reactions.
And if you want to explore these ideas in a good movie, check out Ex Machina.
Actually, I was thinking how interestingly similar this movie was to Westworld.
Okay.
Westworld deals with all these same, same issues. And in fact, there was one point where I almost expected her to say, like she says,
I don't see anything.
The moment
Doesn't look
when,
anything to me.
well, the moment when like he calls her and she's on the phone with him and he's like, come down to this bar. And she's like, that's not my scene. She looked and sounded so much like Dolores to me. It just was interesting. I feel like there's so many similarities, and I'd argue that Westworld's doing a better job at telling that story.
But then, okay, I had those same thoughts, and I definitely enjoyed Westworld more, but I tried to look at this film with the lens of this is one of the first times this story has been told.
This is something I wanted to really talk about.
Yeah.
I feel like this is huge. The first time we've ever, a robot that could have thoughts and emotions, like they have to take their time and explain this profound concept.
Yeah.
Where I get this concept fast forward.
Yeah.
Like, I think that might be my biggest problem with this movie.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
okay, get it, move along.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, I can't think of another film that had robots that looked just like humans that came out before this.
And
I can. The best movie ever made, Alien.
oh yeah,
Robot.
Ash
That was a
wasn't a
pretty big
Milkman.
moment.
That's right.
And it
remember
had
I spoiled it for you.
it had a
Yeah, that's
pacing that you could enjoy.
That's true.
But it wasn't making this point.
No, it
that
was
this
not.
movie is
No,
trying to make.
not at all.
True.
Completely different thing.
And I guess you could make the argument that it's an issue that you already know, so therefore you're familiar with it. But I just think it's the style of film. It's a slow-paced film, and it's intentional. And if you're not into that, then I totally get it. I'm not saying it's not slow. It's definitely slow. But I think there's a whole, style of filmmaking.
So I don't know if it's held in high regard or not, but I think the reason this felt slow was less of the visual and more of the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very atmospheric, right?
Yeah.
Like this film feels like it's just all about appreciating the atmosphere, and the music and the lighting are just atmospheric.
It's very droning. Is the music like every scene had just like a wah.
But even the dialogue and the action, I felt like, this idea of Inception in the dream world, time moves at a different pace. I felt like we slipped into that. There's a part where Rutger Hauer says, I'm going to wait a few seconds and then come after you. And then it's like, it's probably about 2 minutes. So are you a few seconds running at a different speed? And Rutger Hauer's whole speech at the end, he says, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. But he actually says, I've seen things. It's like, why is he delivering this dialogue so slow? they made an intentional effort to slow everything down.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it's a style of filmmaking.
Yeah, and I hate it.
Well, that's fine. You can hate it. I think
It's hard to.
We were in Rome at checking out the ruins.
When in Rome,
and they did an art show in the ruins, and it was like a bunch of art pieces, and they had the one American art piece was this giant stuffed bear taking a shit in the middle of these wonderful ruins. And
America.
And yeah, it's a style, but fuck that.
Yeah. I literally looked at it and said, why do Americans have to ruin everything?
Yeah. Good question.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's that bad. I don't know.
That movie wasn't bad, but it's just like, I get Nick's point.
I think it's a hard film to follow. And I feel like this is like, I've seen this film multiple times. This is one of the best understandings I think I have of the film yet, because the other times I was just struggling to follow it. But if you follow the film, I think, it's slow on purpose because you're supposed to be on the edge of your seat with tension in every scene.
Yeah.
And so they're really milking that tension. And I'm not saying that it necessarily is working the best, but a film that comes to mind that I think does it really well is There Will Be Blood.
Oh.
There are scenes in that movie where nothing happens, but you're on the edge of your seat, and it's very, very slow. So I think that's what they were going for.
Well, I think also in this movie, you're supposed to be taking time to digest some really deep concepts.
Yes. Yeah. That you've already...
like Sam and I were talking about, we get it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where There Will Be Blood was a movie about characters.
Yeah,
and I wanted to enjoy those characters.
That's something I wanted to bring up. Like, I didn't feel like the characters were really fleshed out and really developed. Like, I can't describe the character of the main robot chick. I don't even remember her name.
Rachel.
Hair chick. Rachel, sure.
Hair chick.
Like, she didn't have any defining personality. I mean, she was no different from the other robots in that she didn't want to die. That was the main thing. And like,
Harrison Ford is a man who is tired.
yeah.
When I've finally put my finger on it, because Harrison Ford has a very specific way of acting, being exhausted and under stress. And his performance is, my contacts are drying out. That's Harrison Ford's performance. My contact lenses are dry.
In every movie or just this one?
Every time you see Harrison Ford, when he's so under stress and he's just like kind of falling apart, his contact lenses are drying out. Yeah.
Now,
Harrison Ford.
Is Harrison Ford the bad guy of this movie?
Yeah.
Because I never really quite picked up on that before. But
If you believe that the robots have thought, feelings, and autonomy, then yeah, he's a bad guy.
okay, but let's put a pin in that over here.
Okay, yeah.
But I never quite realized that before, that it's really hard to sympathize with his character because the whole time I'm just sympathizing with these robots.
He was coerced into doing it. He didn't want to do the thing.
Right, the reluctant hero.
I feel like I missed an important line of dialogue because I didn't quite catch what the alternative was. There was a threat, but I don't know what the threat was.
I think the threat was
you're going to investigate them, or else
You'll be arrested.
What was the threat there?
You'll be arrested and thrown in jail.
He said something about tiny people.
He said you're one of the ordinary people or tiny people, meaning you're not a cop anymore, so therefore we could arrest you if you don't do this.
Maybe it's like Los Angeles in the year 2019 when the police are not being controlled and they step on private citizens and shoot innocent people. Crazy science fiction concepts.
I mean, okay, sure. But if the police approached me about hey, we want you to just go and hunt and kill people or not people, whatever the fuck, and put your life at risk, or we're going to kind of be dicks to you, I'd probably just bail on LA.
But he didn't really have that opportunity, seeing as they were right there. And every time he shot a robot, that dude showed up and was like, "Good job."
They knew where he was all the time.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, they're all detectives, So that's their job.
Edward James Olmos.
Yeah.
It was just like, good job, you shot another one. And it's like,
here's my paper mache here.
Like, you were standing here the whole time? Like, why didn't you help?
I was busy doing origami. Here you go.
This fucking robot, like, was choking me against a gas truck, and you were just standing there?
We were talking about before we started recording really briefly that there's the moment in the film where Harrison Ford, and you use the word dreams of a unicorn, or has...
By the way, these are final cut scenes, not in the theatrical version, but continue.
Okay, because I didn't remember the unicorn, but I did know of the origami unicorn. But you use the word dream, but he's fully awake and his eyes are open in that scene.
I thought he'd passed out on the piano, had the dream, and woke up.
That's what I...
Maybe, but it cut... I distinctly remember it cutting back and forth between him awake and the unicorn. Okay. Unless that's him remembering the dream. But, so...
That's how I took it.
Here's my question. Is whether it's a dream, a vision, whatever. He has this vision of this unicorn. First off, what the fuck? Second off, but the real question to me is, how does Edward James Olmos know that he had a dream about a unicorn?
Yeah.
And how does that mean that he makes he makes the origami unicorn at the end? And which leads me to think is, if he knew that Harrison had this vision of a unicorn, does that mean Harrison's a replicant?
Yeah. So I hate this movie, but I'm surprised to know that I know of a big conversation and debate that is happening around this movie that you, a fan of the movie, are not aware of.
Yeah, like,
this is a thing. And it's fun watching you and Sam come to that conclusion, where I've heard people debate this. The idea is, in this cut of the movie, we are to believe that Harrison Ford is a replicant.
Yeah, because she does ask him, have you ever taken the test, too?
And she says, oh, no, this was in the stupid happy ending, but she says, I believe we're made for each other. Made for each other. Oh. But yeah, the idea that Edward James Olmos knows that Harrison Ford has a unicorn thing, even though they never had the conversation.
I mean...
And he made a little unicorn.
It's plausible that Tyrell would have made a Blade Runner to kill his Nexus 6 that got out of control. Like, that's totally...
But Tyrell didn't really hire him, though.
And maybe indirectly.
It's hard to follow. Like, there's a lot of exposition.
Well, they did kind of set it up as like this whole, even his whole coercion thing was like, yeah, nobody else can do this. You know, like the things you're hunting are physically and mentally superior, and they will just fucking kill everything we send at it, except you.
I don't know. Yeah. Harrison Ford got his ass handed to him every step of the way.
And did not die.
Because
he is a robot.
Sean Young saved him once, and then Rutger Hauer saved him the other time.
Yeah, but how do we know he was really going to get, like, killed or whatever? Either, you know?
Because he fell off the side of a building?
He was like losing the fight, but like... I don't know, if he's a robot, would he have died? Like, we didn't...
Like, had he hit the ground, would he have survived?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you can kill them with gunshots, I feel like they could die from falling off a building.
So the guns they had in this movie are fucking ridiculous. The opening scene where he shoots the guy with a handgun and blasts him through a wall.
Yeah.
Like, the handguns aren't that strong.
Future handguns.
Yeah, these are 2019 handguns.
2 more years, Bret. 2 more years.
You know, I think science fiction hinges on its rules. Just rules are fantastic. I love the rules, but you've got to set up your rules. And to a certain extent, your handgun thing. But also, do robots bleed like people? Because he mowed down that...
in Westworld they do.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about Westworld rules. I'm talking about in this movie, set up your rules. Because when he shot that one on the street and she fell down, Sam, you said, oh, so it's not a robot?
Yeah.
And I'm honestly, I don't know. Like, am I to believe that the robots bleed like real people? Or the fact that she's bleeding, does that tell me that he just killed a real person?
Yeah.
Which was a thing they set up. Have you ever killed a person by accident?
That's totally what I thought. And then he was breathing
establish
heavy.
your rules.
Well, to the credit of the film, they did actually. In the beginning, it was a line of dialogue, or it was it might have been in the text in the beginning. It said they're similar to humans in every way. Mm-hmm. So they are flesh and blood.
And I want to talk about that text in a minute.
Yeah.
They kind of did explain that. I
kind of like this alternate theory of that, maybe this company's just really good at doing their research, and all you need to do is know about someone's memory, and then you can fucking kill them, like that, because that's all of the proof that they had, really, that they were replicants. Other than that, the company was like, "Oh yeah, those are replicants. Kill them." Like,
well, they were slaves on the replicant planet.
Yeah, they were slaves on a planet full of what the company said were replicants. Mm. It's like maybe they were just people.
I think that's kind of far-fetched, though. Don't you think?
Seems, I don't know, enslaving people seems easier than creating new people robots.
Well, and having a theme park full of people pretending to be Western is a lot easier than making fuckable, killable robots too.
Yeah. So what we're saying is Westworld doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
But somehow makes more sense than this movie.
I want to talk a little bit about that opening text, and I'm going to read something from the opening text. Replicants were used off-world as slave labor in the hazardous exploration and colonization of other planets. After a bloody mutiny by a Nexus 6 combat team in an off-world colony, replicants were declared illegal. You have just described a very interesting movie.
Yeah.
Why can't I see that? That's interesting.
I think it sounds like Red Rising, this sci-fi book that Bryce has been reading.
Yeah?
I guess it's a little different, but yeah. Well, because that's not a noir detective film that Ridley Scott wanted to tell in the future, I guess.
I mean,
imagine this really interesting scenario. After that, movie.
Well, there's more potential for conflict in that story. Like, there was no, interesting conflict, no curveballs, no anything. Like, we just kind of watched it happen.
I disagree. I think the conflict in this movie is the conflict of Harrison Ford's character going through falling in love with a replicant. That to me is the real conflict in the film.
Okay, well then, what was their relationship? How would you describe their relationship together? Because I didn't. I mean, aside from the rape scene, I didn't feel any emotional connection between them.
It's because she doesn't have emotions.
Well, I think I felt an emotional connection between them personally. But I can see how you would feel that way because I don't think it's super strong. Like, I don't feel an emotional connection to the characters myself, which I think is a huge flaw in the movie. But I did get that they are two people who are struggling with two independent things. She's struggling with
one person.
She's struggling with coming to the realization that she is this robot that isn't real, and her whole reality is shattered, and he's struggling with falling in love with this robot that he knows isn't real, and dealing with that. And I seem to remember more about his wife in the cut that I saw, but we only saw it. We watched the happy ending after we finished the film.
And I was like, he had a wife?
Yeah, I remember the version I saw had more about his wife, which I think set up that internal struggle better. Because there's the scene where she's sitting at the piano and he's laying down, and I think they're both sort of having this conflict, and she lets her hair down, and there's an internal conflict going on there, and that's why it kind of explodes into this fight, because I don't really personally see it as a rape scene, because I see it as them having this conflict within each other that they're trying to deal with in that scene in that moment.
That I didn't get that at all from that scene,
And I
that
don't
would
blame
make it-
you at all.
That
I didn't get that. I've seen this, like I said, I've seen this movie multiple times, and this is the first viewing where I was like, oh, I understand so much more of it.
I feel like the editing did a huge disadvantage to getting that point across. Like several times in that scene, watching it, I felt like there were jump cuts and like things that were inconsistent. And like it didn't feel like as a scene it flowed, and I felt very confused.
I don't
Like
blame
it just
you.
cuts and he's asleep and like in a different room than where he was before. And like,
Well,
his-
he walks into the room.
His conflict is interesting that you see that more than I did, because it kind of felt like they had their first meeting at the corporation and he did the stupid test on her, and the next time they meet, she like just sneaks into the elevator and he's just like, hey, come on in, gonna make you a drink, and like what it never
Well,
seemed
he's
like
not. He slams the door in her face, and he tries to get her to leave instantly. He says,
I thought that was just because she was like a weird stalker in the elevator, and also one of the things he's supposed to kill, or I guess not supposed
He
to kill
didn't
yet,
know
but
that,
she's
though.
illegal.
he didn't know that he had to kill her yet, though.
No, but he knew she was
But-
like an illegal replicant.
Well, I don't think he knew that she was
Taking our
illegal because
jobs.
she's like a product of Tyrell, who's the company.
I thought all the replicants on the planet were illegal.
I found myself wondering that too.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I think that's a good question.
if it's a replicant, does that mean it must die, or is she okay because she was made by the company and she's legitimate?
yeah.
yeah, there's
I
some gray
was-
area.
Either the movie didn't tell me, or I was snoozing.
But he immediately tries to get her to go away, which I see as, when he first meets her, he starts to have an attraction, and then he finds out she's a robot, and so he's like trying to distance himself from her immediately and slams the door in her face, and then he kind of takes pity on her and opens the door when she says Tyrell wouldn't see her and lets her in, but he's still distancing himself from her, throughout their conversation, but still warming up to her. Like, I see this internal struggle where he's like, which is kind of goes to what you've said before, Nick, where you worry about robots that are so lifelike that people forget that they're robots. And it feels like Harrison Ford's struggling with this, like, it's a robot, but she's so lifelike, in that moment where he's like mean to her, and then he apologizes and he's like, I'm sorry, once he sees her have an emotional reaction.
Simulator emotional reaction.
Yes. But I'm just saying, that's the struggle I see, the conflict I see in the film is
Yeah.
So
that he has.
I actually feel like there's a different conflict that, as bored as I am through most of the movie, that I really do like, this desperation of I just do not want to die.
Yeah.
And you don't recognize me as a real living person, and I really desperately don't want to die.
Yeah.
This amazing speech where Rutger Hauer is, I've seen these things, these battles over planets and ships on fire, and I'm just going to die, and that memory goes away, and nobody gets that ever again. Like, that hits you. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are things to be enjoyed about this movie, and I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I was saying, like, I sympathize more, I think, with the robots than I do Harrison Ford's character, because
Totally.
Edgar
Rutger Hauer.
Rutger Hauer, he just, like, it's, yes, he's killing people, but
Yeah.
he has that moment where he starts to break down to Pris because their two other friends have died, the two other robots, and then he has that moment with Pris when she's dead because he's clearly in love with her. And it's just like, it's hard to because it's like, if these people abused you and used you as slaves, and it said that Pris was the model that they would just let the, like, real people soldiers just fuck, it's hard to be like against these robots killing the people who've treated them so poorly.
And that's what we feel coming out of the first year of Westworld. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Westworld's doing it better.
Yeah.
I mean, few things that Westworld I think has done better that this film would have benefited from is a better score. Like, the score, I think, is a lot of what sells Westworld.
Which I think in my reading this morning, that was a huge battle point between Ridley Scott and the studio. This is the music that Ridley wanted you to hear.
I'm sorry.
And the studio had some different music and various other cuts.
I love this music. I'm just going to put it out there. I love the music. I love the lighting. I love the use of light and color in this film. And like I said, it's very atmospheric. I love ambient music, though. Like, I'm a huge ambient fan. So to me, I think it's perfectly fitting and sets the tone for the film.
It does, but like... I don't know. You have to strike a balance. Like with the slow pace, I think you need more dramatic music to help carry those scenes, which is something that Westworld does.
I think more dramatic music would have made the slow edit seem even more slow.
Okay.
Well, so
I can see that.
I had the example I can think of where the entire suspense of the whole movie kind of hinged on the score they put in it, because it wasn't a very good movie otherwise, was Shutter Island.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And they took it too far. The score was
Jump scare the soundtrack.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous soundtrack, but it was like a whole movie of basically just nothing. But there was a lot of suspense because they kept using music cues that were like, something's gonna happen, and then whatever.
Or There Will Be Blood is again another great example of the score having suspense.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I agree with you philosophically, because I've talked about slow burn sci-fi. 2001, the first Star Trek movie, Andromeda Strain.
See, I'm glad you brought up 2001, because in my opinion, 2001 is an excruciatingly slow film.
And so that's how I feel about this.
I know.
And they're both kind of doing the same thing. Slow burn sci-fi, atmospheric. The pace is set with the music. Why do I like 2001 and not this? Now, I will admit to struggling not to fall asleep during both. Somehow the first Star Trek movie doesn't quite lose me, but it's still got that slow burn.
I'm going to try and put a word on it, or I guess a phrase, real instruments. I think the synthesizer
maybe
creates kind of a mood that real orchestration enhances, like it feels better when there's a more human element to it, and in a lot of cases.
Is that maybe musical preference then? Because in my opinion, I like the synthesizer better.
I mean, it's the drone music,
But I like that. That's the thing, is like that. Like, I literally listen to drone synthesized music, so it's, for me, I like it, and as opposed to 2001.
Had kind of a orchestrated drone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Bret's point is that the real instruments have a broader appeal. Like, of the 5 of us or 4 of us in the room, like 3 of us prefer orchestration to 1 who prefers synthesizer. Like,
I'm not going to say I'm...
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a hard preference, but
yeah, I mean, like, it would... We felt that would have enhanced.
I think it might have, for this one.
I mean, I think it makes it feel more real. And like, this is a very stylized stylized film with stylized music, which I think further distanced me from the believability of it and engrossing myself in it.
I would throw in a different suggestion, which is when you have something that is so slowly paced, then the subject of the movie, if it is an interesting subject, you're going to hang on. If it's not inherently an interesting subject, then the pacing of the movie is not going to help you hang on. I'm much more interested in the visuals and the science of 2001 than I am with the introspection of whether robots are real people in this movie.
Yeah.
And so I hang on to 2001. I hang on to Star Trek. I can't hang on to this because slow pacing plus a boring topic, I'm out.
That's interesting, because for me, I feel similarly, but it's the opposite. Is the visuals of 2001 aren't anything new to me because I've seen so many space movies, but the visuals of Blade Runner are so unique to Blade Runner, and it's a world that they've built that I've only ever seen in Blade Runner.
But I think that means you agree with my reasoning for why some people prefer 2001, some people prefer Blade Runner.
Totally.
You're the person who thinks this story is more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that's, to me, the thing that I love about the film. is the visuals, like I said, and the lighting. There's just like amazing lighting. Like they're just standing in his Mayan temple apartment's kitchen, and there's just like ads in the window that are blinking and streams of light from, like, I'm guessing spaceships going by that come in and create these awesome beams. And it's just all very like atmospheric, and it's the type of movie that I think would be awesome to just have on like in a bar. Like if you had an atmospheric sci-fi bar in the background,
But
you know?
maybe Luke Besson is just ripping this off, but I mean, Fifth Element has these sorts of visuals and it's fun.
But I feel like the focus is more on the characters and then on the environment. Like, I would say Blade Runner. Like, the opening scene is this super long establishing shot of this city.
Yeah.
And, like, Fifth Element, I don't remember how it starts, but everything I remember from that movie.
Archaeological dig and the aliens show up. Yeah. Okay. But it's a faster pace.
Yeah, and it's all about, like, these characters. And
because Fifth Element is a comedy.
Yeah, comedy sci-fi.
It's a lot easier to describe the characters of The Fifth Element than this movie. But a lot easier to describe the world of this movie than the world of The Fifth Element.
I think Sam hit the nail on the head where she said, like, Ridley's attention to detail went into, you know, the set design and the visuals. Yeah. But, like, you know, just going back to what you said, Nick, Fifth Element is a comedy and it's lit a lot more brightly like a comedy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is lit far more cinematic. Yeah. And that's what I really like about this film, that it's just like there's, you know, you could almost pause any shot and the lighting is just incredible. Like there's a shot where naked robot man is like running past these boarded up windows and the light stream. Like it's just
there were a lot of really great shots in this.
And that's why I say this is a great movie that I don't like. And I think the best movies are brave and take risks and aspire to do something that will be unappealing to certain parts of the audience. Yeah. And that's what makes them great.
Yeah. I visually though, like I like the lighting, but it feels muddy to me. Like comparing it to what I remember from 2001, it's very crisp and clean and clear. A lot of times, both due to the dialogue and the visuals, I felt confused. Like it was hard for me to follow what I was supposed to focus on screen.
But that is the style. It's a style that Ash likes that you and I not so much.
Yeah, that's very much the style of filmmaking, and that's as I said in the beginning before we even saw the film, that's what I like about the film, is that it's not the super shiny, clean, crisp future world that you see so many times over and over again. Yeah. I like that it's different. I like that it's that you know, noodle bar that he sits down in the middle of a busy alleyway like feels so real to me. That feels more real to me than the super shiny, everything's white and shiny and futuristic, like, you know. I don't think that that's a realistic, you know, I think that places like that will exist in the future, but I think more than 50% of the planet won't be able to afford those super shiny, you know, and will look like these alleyways with weird characters and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle, because I can also never imagine a world where all walls are white, full of machinery. Yeah. And it's just like nobody would put up with that.
Like Harrison's apartment.
Yeah, the Mayan temple or whatever. Yeah.
So in the opening crawl, they're setting up the world and they say there's a special police force that hunts them down. They're called Blade Runners. And we as the audience say, okay, what? Like, why? What? Blade Runner? Like, that doesn't...
they don't really explain it, do they?
They really don't. Yeah, what is Blade Runner? What does that mean? I
wish that his gun was like a blade, like the model blade or something, or like, I don't know.
It's like somebody came up with a cool phrase.
Well, it's my guess is like running a blade through someone. Like they're just assassins.
Yeah, that was
kind of cool.
Blade Runner.
Kind of what I... Like, this is going to sound really stupid, but I kind of thought this movie would be similar to that stupid scene in Wild Wild West where they have like those blades coming after them to
God,
chop
and they're
off their
running.
heads. Like,
So, like, this is a legitimate, hey, Twitter, has anybody read the book? Let us know. Is that explained?
Oh, this is a book? I thought I had that memory, but I couldn't remember.
Oh, yeah, this is, and I was going to bring this up, and I forgot in the beginning. This is a Philip K. Dick book.
Okay.
And we saw Total Recall, and we've been talking about seeing Running Man.
Oh.
But yeah, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is the name of the book. If anybody's
that's right.
read it, please let us know if the phrase Blade Runner is explained.
I wouldn't be surprised if the book does a better job, like as far as like expanding upon those.
You say that, but have you ever read a Philip K. Dick book?
No. So maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Total Recall.
Totoro.
I get hard for Totoro Call.
That was like one of my favorite jokes.
I feel like
doing our greatest
these
hits.
could easily be the same world.
Yeah. And also Running Man. What?
Would you say Running Man was a Philip K?
Oh, wait. No, I'm way off. Running Man was Stephen King.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say.
Why did I think? Probably because Arnold.
It's just books.
But still, Running Man could exist in this universe. Yeah.
Man, Running Man really could exist in this universe. That kind of, from what I remember, looks pretty similar.
Yeah. Did you guys notice that they called them skin jobs?
Only the captain. was
And
the
that's a
only
thing
one.
from Battlestar Galactica. They called the
was
Cylons
it?
skin jobs.
Maybe Almost was like, hey guys, I was on this
Yeah,
other movie.
I got this great phrase. I just came up with it.
And I think that leads to a lot of the confusion too, is because the captain, I'm assuming he's a captain, is like calling them skin jobs and not replicants. And replicants is already a weird name, and skin jobs is a weird name, and it just like makes it hard to follow.
I followed that part. I think what made it hard to follow was that instead of showing us the details that we needed, they said them and kind of nonchalantly. Like,
Yeah.
just really casually in conversation.
I like stuff like that.
I don't dislike it, but I also, like, because of the slow pace, found myself like admiring the details of the scene and not necessarily paying attention to the dialogue like I apparently should have been. And I found
They gave
myself
you
very
plenty of
lost.
time to absorb everything.
That's true.
But it is one of those things where, a point of potential improvement is that if the rest of the movie doesn't make sense because you missed a single important line of dialogue,
then add a voiceover narration. That's what the studio is saying.
like repetition can definitely be bad, but I think if the whole thing hinges on missing even a single word or something, like maybe needed to work on the rest of the storytelling a little bit more, because a lot of the dialogue in this was like half sentences and implied conversations, and it's cool, and I think it works better in books.
I would agree, but they did actually repeat information. I noticed this time around watching it. So the text info that they gave you in the beginning, the captain tells us that info again when he sits down with Harrison Ford. And then the info we get from the scene with the replicant that shoots the investigator in the beginning, it gets repeated over and over again. So and it looks like, I wouldn't be surprised if those scenes were just Harrison Ford driving in his car and they added in the dialogue again to make it seem like he was listening to it. Yeah. But I think they did that so that you understood where Harrison was going, next. But where it gets really confusing, in my opinion, is the snake scale and how that all came into play. That part
was not easy to follow.
And I'm not even really 100% sure. Like, did they kill? Is that lady dead in the picture?
I don't know.
I don't even know who that lady is. Was that supposed to be that was the snake lady and that was her tattoo?
Yeah, so that's how we tracked that replicant. Mm-hmm. But then I thought, that kind of set up the story to be something where he was going to have to track down each replicant like that. And I feel like that would have been a little more interesting. Very film noir, follow the clues to find the people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But he just kind of found
the one.
Stumbled into the rest of it.
Just
it was
true.
all atmosphere and no story.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong there. It's definitely, that's the style, I think.
So these robots are completely indistinguishable from people. You cannot tell the difference without running this Turing test. Except for the eyes.
Yeah.
I take a huge issue with that. Mm-hmm. They're trying to find something to communicate to the audience that they're weird and different, but don't expect me, the audience, to be able to see something so easily when the people in the movie can't recognize it that easily.
Well, yeah, it's like the question that comes to mind is if you can just see this weird reflection in their eyes, then why do you need this test in the first place?
Well, you guys, I really want to talk about something that really bothers me, not just in this movie, something I've been thinking about a lot.
Okay, Nick, we know you don't think robots have feelings.
No. So I've got, in my mind, there is this movie trope that drives me crazy, and I call it sexy fighting. Sexy fighting. Imagine, if you will, Captain America is fighting Crossbones, and Captain America jumps up in the air, drops down, wraps his legs around Crossbones' head, and twists his torso as a way of fighting Crossbones.
But is Captain America wearing his pleasure suit? Because if he was, then that might be acceptable.
And is Captain America a pleasure bot? Because...
So the point is...
It's pleasure fighting is what it is.
Men don't do that. You see Daryl Hannah in this movie. You see characters like Black Widow do it. They jump up, wrap their legs around a male character as a way of fighting them. That is gross.
I've only ever seen that done by a dude in pro wrestling.
Really?
Yeah, there's like a move where they jump and like grab the head, but the legs, and do a backflip and throw someone. That's a thing.
But when you see it in movies, it's all like, well, it's a female, so they're going to fight sexy, which doesn't make sense. It's degrading to that character. It's dumb. It's just dumb.
So on this subject, I'm going to change subject slightly and say that this thing is why I cried in the beginning of Wonder Woman.
I just saw Wonder Woman finally, and they do the sexy fighting.
In that beginning?
Yeah, they jump up, wrap their legs around people's heads as a way of fighting them. And that bugged me.
It didn't come across as sexy fighting to me.
I mean, I don't mean to, like, burst anyone's bubble here, but just look at Wonder Woman's outfit.
That
it's
also
all
bothered me a
about
little bit.
Sexy fighting.
That was
definitely.
Upskirt the motion picture.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be liked about Wonder Woman. But it still kind of bummed me out that it was the Upskirt movie.
I don't remember the Upskirt.
Sounds like a weird version
They
of
all wear leather briefs with a flimsy skirt over it, so when they're fighting, you're constantly looking up their skirts.
Sure.
Can't she wear pants? Can't she wear pants? It's
like
more
Jessica
practical.
Jones. You know, like Jessica Jones doesn't sexy fight. Jessica Jones doesn't wear skimpy outfits.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because a movie that I just saw, and I don't know if anybody else saw it, but Atomic Blonde.
Still haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it yet.
Amazing choreography and absolutely no sexy fighting. In fact, the opposite. Charlize Theron gets beat the fuck up, and she still gets up and like continues fighting. And I never really quite, I think, thought about it before, but when you just said that, it like clicked in my mind. And she fights like a man in that movie for sure. Like she is just kicking ass, and it has absolutely nothing to do with being sexy.
And wouldn't it be nice if that's what movies were like, where she's not fighting like a man, she's fighting like somebody fighting.
Fighting, yeah, exactly.
Right? Like that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean,
To be fair, there is like a man fighting stereotype style too.
Okay.
And it's standing as still as possible and just grappling.
Okay.
Which also happened in this movie.
Isn't that also wrestling? Like a lot of wrestling.
That's Bret's only frame of reference here.
You know, like in a time where you should be throwing punches or kicks or like trying to dodge, instead two dudes will just kind of like hold shoulders or like grab each other's heads.
But I think that's a real thing in real boxing because they're so exhausted. And then that's just kind of translated to movies.
I mean, it definitely feels more real than grabbing your opponent by the head with your thighs.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is not something a human could do, which is not an efficient way to fight, which would not be an effective way to subdue an opponent.
No.
It's
Yeah.
just make them sexy on screen.
Yeah. I mean, I will give Blade Runner some credit in that it kind of gave it a weird feeling. Like, it very clearly set up that she was not human.
And also like a super weird circus acrobat.
Yeah.
Flips
Nick,
for fun.
all she knows how to do is use her vagina. So she's fighting with her vagina.
I do think there is a method of replicant fighting set up in this movie, which is that weird, creepy, uncomfortable thing of they will stick their fingers in the holes of your face. Right? And that is very creepy and unsettling. Fingers in the nose, fingers in the eyes. Like replicant fighting, you got me. Like
the 3 stages were replicants.
Yeah. They're supposed to be very weird and uncomfortable, and that does work in this movie.
Sexy fighting.
Sexy
Interesting. Fighting. I like it. I mean, I don't like it. You know what I mean?
The idea of the trope.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed, I've talked before, like a way of being a badass in a movie is to eat. You know, like in the newer Star Trek movie when Chris Pine takes a bite out of an apple during the Kobayashi Maru test, it's like he doesn't give a fuck. He's a badass. Harrison Ford has a different move. Harrison Ford will fall asleep on you, and he's a badass. I think in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he falls asleep in the middle of a kiss.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you badass. You don't give a fuck. Harrison Ford's so cool. That's his move. He'll just fall asleep on you.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Harrison Ford don't give a fuck. Harrison Ford is sleepy.
Like a 2-year-old. Nap time.
Yep.
This is my vodka nap time. Just one shot.
Oh, speaking of vodka, that is something I loved in this movie. When he did that shot of vodka, completely clear, transparent liquid, he does the shot and there's his blood floating in it.
That was a good shot.
That's a shot.
See, it's just the small details that are just so Ridley Scott that I think I love so much about this film.
The guy who we know is very careful about every single frame.
Yeah, it's like that was no mistake, you know?
But yeah, I think that's kind of like having seen a few more of them. That's like the Ridley Scott thing is extreme world building and like B+ storytelling.
You know, I think it's just I like Ridley Scott's style, and I will agree that the storytelling is not great because it's the same for me with like Wes Anderson. Like if you show me a Wes Anderson film, I love it. But like in my opinion, Fantastic Mr. Fox is like not that great of a story. But I love Wes Anderson's style, so I love that about it. But you know,
some movies are about story, and some are about the artifice. And sometimes being about the artifice is good enough. So let's get some final thoughts, and I think our final thoughts are fairly transparent. But let's I think it'd be a little fun to mix in. Do you want to see a sequel with Ryan Gosling? And actually, before we do that, it is interesting to point out, is Deckard a replicant is kind of answered by the fact that old Harrison Ford is in the new movie.
Here's what I was thinking. So I'm glad you asked that question because I'll just jump in and say I am interested in seeing the new movie because I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, what's the plot of the new movie? Is it that Ryan Gosling is going like the new, I don't know. So I'm not spoiling anything. I don't know the plot of the new movie.
Because the trailer is about just the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly. Like the trailer doesn't tell you anything. But I was like, okay, is Ryan Gosling, like, is the new movie about Ryan Gosling hunting them down? And if so, the question is, well, then how could, is he hunting Harrison Ford down? And then is the twist that she is still alive because they did find a way to keep her alive longer? Like, what if they did find that technology and they were able to keep her alive? And then Harrison Ford could technically then still be a replicant because they found a way to keep him alive too. But that was the interesting, like, plot twist I was thinking is, Ryan Gosling could be searching for Harrison Ford, but then plot twist, she's still alive. Double plot twist, he's a robot too.
Double plot twist, what does it mean?
or it's the thing that I mentioned earlier, which maybe is replicant is just code word for a different enslaved population, and they just convinced everyone they were robots, and they kill them all.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting.
Because they did say something about it being a virus, right? That kills them. Is that what he
was
said?
saying that if you tried to extend their life, that the programming would cause a virus, and they would just end up dying anyway.
One of the
Gotcha.
cures they tried mutated into a virus.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I really like that story idea, Brett.
I mean, this
They're
movie,
not really robots. They're just told they're robots.
remove the sci-fi from this movie. This is a tale of a Southern slave hunter. Like,
Okay.
you know, it's not that far of a stretch.
Yeah.
But anyway, I still enjoyed the film. I feel like I feel like this is my third or fourth watch, and I feel like I understand it a lot better now, now that I've seen it so many times. But yeah, I'm just a fan of the atmosphere. It's not my favorite movie ever, but there you go.
So I agree with you where now that I've seen the movie multiple times, I understand it better. The more times you see it, the better you understand it. I still don't really like it for reasons I've said. It's a great movie that I don't like. Insanely, I kind of want to see the new movie. I'm curious.
I am curious.
I
too,
expect to be sleepy. I love Ryan Gosling. I love Denis Villeneuve. And I'm just kind of curious to see what happens, but I'm bracing myself for being
Should we get
just
you like the
tired.
Clockwork Orange things that like keep your eyes open?
some caffeine maybe. I don't know. But I'm curious.
I want to see the new movie because I enjoyed Westworld so much, and we went back and watched the original Westworld and didn't like
That's
it.
interesting.
The concept was told for a dated audience.
Yeah.
But the concept still holds up. So I think the concept holds up. It's just it was told to an audience where it doesn't hold up.
If
Yeah.
this movie does not take an hour to explain the mind-blowing concept of a conscious robot
Yeah.
and get straight to a story,
Yeah.
we're in good shape.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would
Which
I think
they
it would
have
be cool.
to, right? I mean, they have
better.
to.
I'm also kind of excited about the possibility of this movie having a modern but still synthesized score, and
Like a synth wave.
I think
Giorgio
this
still working?
Who?
Giorgio Moroder? Is that guy still
He
working?
did that track with Daft Punk.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he didn't really do it. He just talked over it.
Okay.
Anyway.
but it's given the mood of this film and the whole post Nolan all the music must be ominous. This movie might be a place where that works really well. So yeah, I'll probably check out the new one.
Brett and Sam, I'm not sure you gave your thoughts on this movie. If there's anything else you...
I didn't care for it. I'm sorry. I really, really wanted to like it, and I didn't. I didn't even like it
Sorry,
a little
Ridley.
bit. I'm sorry.
I actually kind of like this.
Yay!
Right down the middle.
50-50, baby.
Yeah. And I think reaching back to the It commentary, it's going to have the Stephen King effect for me, which is that it's going to be way more fun to remember and think about than it was to watch, because the concepts and the story were actually really cool. And just the amount of time it took to get through it wasn't the best.
What if you could watch this movie at 1.5 speed and get a great movie?
Yeah, well, like that's kind of what it is. Like in my head now, there's no time affixed to the cool elements of this story, and it's already more fun to think and talk about than it was to watch. But it is a cool story. So yeah, I'm on the positive side of this one. I don't think I'll watch it again, but I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah.
All right, so that is Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Yeah,
Walk with that knife.
If you like this show, it's part of the Laugh TV network of content. It's this podcast and a YouTube channel where we've got a drinking show, a cooking show, and video game parodies and other stuff.
And hopefully by the time you're hearing this, if all things have gone correctly, hopefully we will have 4 very special Let's Drinks out that unfortunately Bret isn't in. Sorry Bret fans. What? But we did Stranger Things cocktails where we actually make the cocktails, and I did it with my friends Tara and Natalie, who are from the YouTube channel Tara and Natalie Try Stuff. But stay tuned for that because we make some really fun drinks with all sorts of weird things like activated charcoal and dry ice and gummy worms. I think you would be glad that you weren't there, Bret.
Yeah, that all sounds awful. Maybe gummy worms, but...
Actually, the gummy worms, surprisingly, were awful.
Oh.
But anyway, so make sure you follow us on YouTube, like Bret said, or you can follow us on Twitter. We're at LaughTV on Twitter, or you can follow this podcast at Let's Rewatch on Twitter, where we do fun things, like sometimes we do movie polls where you guys get to choose the movie we're going to watch, or sometimes I'll post pictures of the movie and you guys that we are watching, and you guys in real time can guess what movie we're watching. And one person, Brian R. Snape, said Good Burger. And I posted this one. And then another person said Theodore said Weekend at Bernie's, which was hilarious. But Griff Thompson got the correct answer, Blade Runner. And Mobius Strip also responded to my still with, is this part of the test? Which I responded to him with, please answer the questions.
Excellent answer. So if you enjoyed our podcast, please give us a review on iTunes or Google Play Music, and please encourage your friends to also listen and subscribe.
Thank you.
That's
You're
right.
so polite.
So make sure your podcast feeds are up to date and let your friends know we'll be doing this every 2 weeks. Join us again next time for another episode of Let's Rewatch.
Man, I'm running out of movies, guys.
Start making them up.
Well, next time we're going to watch...
Wait, is that the real name of the movie?
It's PHFFFT.
Are you sure it's not pronounced?